Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raquel Rosario Sánchez, and I am the spokeswoman for FiLiA. I was just wondering if the singers for the Iranian singers, if some of them were around and if they could come to the stage, please. They are perfect. Okay, so I am very delighted to see you all here. This is the FiLiA Sisterhood Is Global panel. We have a wonderful array of speakers. But before we begin, just to get into the spirit of this global sisterhood panel, we have some singers who want to do a song for you. Do you want to come in? Yeah.
Hi everybody, it's lovely to be here. Just to say we are protesting harmony. You might hear us singing about the place. And we're going to do a song now called Zan Zendigi Azadi, which is in solidarity with the people struggling in Iran. And the chant, Zan Zendigi Azadi, is a chant that's been used a lot, meaning women, life and freedom, or women, life and liberty.
We are here together because we want to, can you hear me in the back? Okay, we're here today because we have so many women from all over the world who are bringing such amazing feminism to FiLiA, and we want to have a panel to highlight the work that they do in their countries. So I'm going to ask very briefly our speakers to just introduce themselves very briefly, and then we're just going to talk. We're going to have a conversation about the work that they do, the lessons that they have learned, the challenges that they have faced, and how can we move forward together. So, Simone, do you mind starting?
Hi, everyone. I'm Simone from Australia, and I'm really honoured to be here and to be with all of you. I think it's fantastic that we're all together, and thanks to Lisa Marie and all the FiLiA volunteers for pulling this off, especially with the stresses of the last few days particularly. The work that I do in Australia is as a sex trade abolitionist. I'm a sex trade survivor, and Australia would have to be like, you know, one of the many countries they call the Wild West of prostitution. I better move on.
Hi everyone, oh my voice is so loud. I'm used to shouting at demonstrations. I'm Maryam Namazie. I'm the spokesperson of One Law for All and the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain. I'm also an Iranian-born activist defending the woman life freedom revolution in Iran. You just heard that wonderful song. It's a revolution of free women, rebellious women, disobedient women. And I'm happy to be here to share some of that with you.
Hi everybody, I'm thrilled to be here. I said this morning I thought I was an atheist until I got here, because now I feel like I've died and gone to heaven. And you've really increased the bar, because if my audience doesn't look like this, I don't want to speak anymore. My name's Mina, I'm from Cyprus, which is a small island in the Mediterranean. It's a lot warmer than your island. And I'm a women's rights lawyer, a politician, and a gender equality activist.
Hello, my name is Betty. I'm from Morocco. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm a feminist activist. I founded in Morocco the first movement fighting for individual liberties, and it's a feminist universalist secularist movement struggling for the separation of public institutions and religious organizations, and for a pro-choice movement fighting for sexual and reproductive rights.
I'm Bronwyn Winter. If you were at the last session, you've already sort of met me because I made a comment after Reem's panel. I've been a lesbian and feminist activist and academic for many decades. I call myself an intellectual rather than academic, because the word academic has so many negative connotations for so many women. I work on a lot of things, a lot of different things. I work on them in Australia, in France, and transnationally. And I guess you'll find out more about me when I start talking. I'm going to be talking about a very specific issue in Australia, in fact.
Hello, I'm Nela. I'm coming from Croatia, former Yugoslavia, Western Balkans, depending the name, everybody says something else. I'm a feminist activist, firstly against violence against women since '87, when we established the first shelter and helpline, and then also became the peace activist, anti-war activist, and lesbian activist.
Hello, my name is Nadia. I'm from Saudi Arabia. I've been working on promoting gender equality and justice and documenting human rights violation in Saudi Arabia.
Hi everyone, my name is Zobnina. I was born in Russia, in St. Petersburg. I used to live in Cyprus. I live right now in Scotland, and I'm the director of the European Network of Migrant Women. I don't think I can be speaking about the work I'm doing in my country, because I don't think I have a country, or I have several countries. But I would like to speak about the work of our network and what our members are doing in different European states on migrant and refugee women.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mina, I wonder if we could begin with you. So you are a Turkish Cyprus politician and you're a lawyer. And you're also a campaigner for women's rights. I was wondering if you can begin by talking to us as a parliamentarian. Tell us about the fight for women's rights in your country.
Yes, I'm not actually a parliamentarian. I'm the leader of a political party, I think a bit by accident, because I didn't like the guy that was running against me. But I really miss civil society. I spent 20 years in civil society. I had a PowerPoint, but I don't think... Okay, should we do it now or no? Okay. My own domestic violence story, which I mentioned a little bit in my previous panel, kind of very long story short, my mother's husband perpetrated violence against me, and he was in prison. I was in a shelter, and I left London and moved to my hometown, which is Nicosia in Cyprus. I'm a Turkish Cypriot, and I was very passionate then about being a lawyer, becoming a lawyer, because I wanted to be a legal aid lawyer, because my legal aid lawyer was terrible in the UK. But then the head of my organization, who I met when I was in Cyprus, said, well, there's a small problem with that plan. There is no legal aid in this country. So my organization, we lobbied and advocated for legal aid. We still don't have domestic violence legislation at all in Northern Cyprus. So the problem with that is that if, for example, somebody is drunk on the street and they call the police will press charges for being an alcoholic and disturbing the peace. But if your husband or your boyfriend or your partner is drunk on the street passing judgments about you, then the police will come and tell you to not criticize it. This is my organization, Association of Women to Support Living. It's my NGO that I miss very much, and after today I'm sure I'm going to go back to it. If we keep going really fast, I'll just go through photos and I'll do this as quickly as possible. So that's my little island. I don't know if you can see the little island at the bottom. Why I chose to start with this picture is because my organization is an intersectional organization as well. So we don't just deal with gender-based violence and feminism and gender justice. We also try to enhance the peace culture on our island, and especially if you're looking out for what's going on in the Mediterranean now. In that environment where there's so much nationalist, pro-war rhetoric, what we're doing is very important, because this organization, with the support of another organization called WimPeace in the Mediterranean, every year we bring 10 Greek Cypriots, 10 Turkish Cypriots, 10 Greeks and 10 Turks together in a summer camp. And this picture was from before the checkpoints were opened. We managed to somehow get permission from the UN to put a picture of a united Cyprus in the middle of the island with a peace sign inside. Just a small reminder, that's me over there 20 years ago, the one in the green top. 20 years ago, that seemed to me like the most biggest thing that I would ever do in my life. And I just wanted to share that with you, because I want you all to know, in the organizations that you're in now, that small activities like that really place roots into young people that then grow and they don't stop. And these activists, especially when you catch them young, they keep going. So if we quickly go past this, rather than going over slides, I'm gonna just show photos. Keep going. I'm just going to give a few examples through these photos of what's going on in Cyprus. This woman, her name was Atli. She was found dead a day on the 1st of January, so the day after New Year's, at the bottom of her apartment. And her family reached me saying that the police wanted to stop the investigation and say that it was a suicide. And this was only 24 hours after her death. So imagine what kind of an investigation could have been carried out in 24 hours that decides that a woman has committed suicide. And we noticed that they weren't carrying out an effective investigation, and we went and we spoke to the neighbors, and actually the very next door neighbor, who was a woman, said that the last words that I heard Akile saying was, "Enough, enough, help." When we asked the police why they didn't take this into account, they said that they didn't even take a statement from her. So we waited for 6 months. We opened a campaign for an effective investigation to open. We got interim orders for the children to be with their grandparents, with the mother of the woman. And the police refused. And only 6 months after this child, again with court orders, was able to get psychotherapy, it was only 6 months down the line that she was able to tell her psychologist that she saw her dad pulling her mother across the living room, unconscious. And they reopened the investigation, and he was finally prosecuted and convicted, and he got 30 years. What's interesting is the judge, in his verdict, he did not refer to the child's testimony once. He said there was enough evidence there without referring to the child's evidence to conclude that she had been killed. So, if we keep going through the photos, The biggest problem that we had in Cyprus, because we're a small divided island, and as you all know, gender issues were not relevant, were not important. The priority in Cyprus is always, the solution. It's just like women trying to work in Palestine or other conflict areas in the world. Gender is always a peripheral issue as far as they're concerned. So when we were talking about gender-based violence, they were saying, no, Cypriots, we don't have this problem. This problem comes. Oh, am I talking too much? I thought I had 5 minutes.
Can I come back to you
Absolutely.
on the gender, on the
I'm
violence
sorry.
against women issue?
Sorry.
No worries at all. I was just wondering if we could now have a moment with Nadia. Nadia, would you like to speak with you about the current challenges of women in Afghanistan and what have... Sorry, I'm so sorry. My brain is all... The circumstances are extraordinary. Thank you all for being here. Nadia, thank you so much for being here. I wonder if you can speak with us about the conditions of women's rights in Saudi Arabia and what you have learned as a feminist and an advocate for women's rights there.
Okay, so just a quick information. Saudi Arabia started, the current family that rules Saudi came to power 93 years ago with the help of the British government. So the King Abdulaziz, who started the kingdom, used to get a monthly salary from the British government to rule in their behalf the region. So things has changed a bit after that, but it is still an absolute monarchy. It's a totalitarian, fascist regime, and monarchy in its nature is patriarchal and oppressive. So, and now, more than any time, the human rights situation is really terrible, especially with women. A lot of women face a long sentence in prison and even death penalty right now for certain women just because for advocating and organizing and even trying to mobilize the people. Trying to put some pressure on the government to change or to reform the situation, what's going on in Saudi. So,
Thank you so much. I'll come back to you in a second. I wonder if we could, Betty, could you, you're the founder of the Alternative Movement of Individual Liberties in Morocco. Tell us a little bit about, you created an organization called...
Mali.
Yes, sorry, hold on.
Mali?
You created an organization and you said that you engage in feminist civil disobedience. Can you tell us, and I love that, I love that you said, what was it? That you organize shocking campaigns and you say that they are shocking, and I love it. So tell us a little bit about your work.
So the organization is Mali, Alternative, in French, Mouvement Alternatif pour les Libertés Individuelles, in English, Alternative Movement for Individual Liberties. And it's a movement of civil disobedience. It's the unique movement of civil disobedience and the unique abolition movement. We organize happenings and actions and campaigns about a lot of taboos and to break taboos actually, and very sensitive subjects and issues. So I don't know if we have some. No?
I think we may have issues with the,
Okay.
with the slides.
So
Can we focus, for example, on the abortion vote that you organized in coordination with
Women on Waves.
Yeah.
From Netherlands. Just one thing. It's Morocco. It's an absolute monarchy of divine rights, so it's important because there is no human rights. Islam is the state religion, and the king Mohammed VI is the commander of the believers, so considered as a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. So there is no freedom of conscience and freedom of religion do not exist in Morocco. We have draconian laws and sexist laws based on Sharia, on Islamic law. So sexual and reproductive rights do not exist. For example, sexual intercourse outside marriage and adultery are forbidden. homosexuality is criminalized and abortion is prohibited. Unless, there is one case, unless the health of the pregnant woman is in danger, in which case the husband's authorization is required. So, abortion rights is not allowed. So in 2012, we organized a big happening with Women on Waves, organization from Netherlands. And so it was a pro-choice happening. So we invite Women on Waves with their boats in Morocco. And so it was like a huge, actually, action during a week. We had a lot of problems with authorities, with a lot of organizations as well, and a lot of people were against us actually. So we don't have we don't have it. So too bad. Yeah.
Do you want to keep talking about the boat issue, abortion boat?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have another question, maybe?
I have a follow-up, but it could be later.
Okay. So we organized, that was the first pro-choice action of our movement, but since then we organized a lot of other campaigns and other happenings fighting for abortion rights, because in Morocco, actually, I don't know if I have it there, like organizations and political do not fight for abortion rights as pro-choice, as freedom, as free choice for women. So we have organizations fighting for therapeutic abortion, based on medical approach. So it's very difficult to share our fight and our ideas, because feminist organizations as well in Morocco, you have to know that in Morocco all feminists are liberal feminists, some live femmes. So it's very complicated because Mali is the only radical feminist movement. So we are alone fighting for reproductive rights as pro-choice. And we are helping women despite the risks in Morocco with abortion pills. And I do it publicly because I think it's very important to help women and to share this fight, and sorority is very important. But in Morocco, we ask a lot of organizations and feminist organizations or feminist individuals, but they do not want to help us helping women to have an abortion. That's it.
You know, the reproductive rights issue sounds incredibly difficult in Morocco, but then I was just thinking in my head, I'm from the Dominican Republic. If in the Dominican Republic we don't even allow abortion when the health of the mother is in danger, so it could get worse. But that's why we're here, to fight back. And I wonder if I could go now to Anna, who is the strategy and executive director of the European Network of Migrant Women. And your organization argues that all your projects are aimed at securing and improving the rights of migrant women and refugee women and girls. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you have been involved in?
Yes, there is so much going on in our network. We have a lot of projects that are kind of visible, and they are on the surface. You can see them on the website. So, for example, one of them right now, we're building the first in Europe, but actually it will be the first in the world, database on legal database of case law on the fundamental rights of migrant and refugee women. So right now we're doing the case collection, so hopefully in 1 year we will launch the website, and we want this to be, at least at the European level. I have to clarify, we go up to the European Union level. We don't go up to like CEDAW or Council of Europe. It's just because it's a little bit too much in terms of jurisprudence. But yes, we hope that it will become the source of reference for NGOs, legal experts, legal practitioners, hopefully migrant women themselves. to find those legal precedents that were missing. And we made some, well, discoveries. For us, they're quite obvious, but they have to be documented. That, for example, overwhelming majority of successful asylum cases, they are men, they're not women. I mean, generally, statistically speaking, if we look at the most people who are seeking asylum, statistically, they would be men. And in some countries, in some ethnic groups, the ratio would be like 90 to 10%. Because women are not allowed to travel. They never reach the borders. They never reach this safety where they can seek asylum. But also, you know, when we look at these numbers and the basis on which asylum is granted to women, so for example, there are many more cases for men on the grounds of homosexuality and the persecution of gay men, and you find very, very, very few lesbians. And the grounds that we argue is one of the most significant for women to flee, which is male violence against women. It's simply almost non-existent in jurisprudence when women are fleeing forced marriage or female genital mutilation, trafficking, domestic violence. I mean, there are numerous forms. It is not seen as a legitimate ground to seek asylum. So this is one aspect of our work and the network, and we kind of, you know, try to engage other organizations. And for example, we're extremely grateful for our collaboration with FiLiA over several years now. But also we do a lot of internal projects in the network, and this is something that you will not find on the website because it is internal strategic work with migrant and refugee women. We do capacity building for our members. We do a lot of awareness raising. For example, for us it was extremely important to raise awareness among our membership about this gender identity situation before it hits everyone like a huge tsunami. And there was not enough realization, because obviously when you speak to women, they're like, what is this? What are you talking about? This is not an issue for us. And it is our duty as an organization to raise this awareness and prepare the women for what is coming, because it is coming. So
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anna. I'm going to get back to you about one of your projects. I wonder if we could hear from Maryam Namazie. Maryam, you're a renowned feminist campaigner who works around the rights of women and girls, secularism everywhere, but also like in Iran. Can you tell us a bit about the situation, the state of play for women's rights in Iran right now?
Well, I think the situation in Iran is very heartbreaking, very tragic, but also very inspiring and very hopeful. And I think as women, we're used to heartbreak and tragedy. I think especially if you look at theocratic states like the Islamic regime, like Saudi Arabia, like Afghanistan, it is built and maintained on the bodies of women and girls. And so that heartbreak and tragedy has always been part of our lives. But the inspiring part is to see a new generation, a Generation Z of girls and women with such courage, with such inspiration, really subverting the idealized image of an ideal woman in Islam and as fundamentalists view them, you know, subservient, quiet, silent, not seen, not heard. Here you've got a generation of rebellious, disobedient women who are saying no to theocracy and who are raising the banner of women, life, freedom, first raised in Rojava in Syrian Kurdistan and now reverberating across the globe. So I think this is such a hopeful movement for the women of our region in particular. I think it can change the world. And very often the example I give is when the Islamic regime came to power in Iran on the back of a suppressed revolution, we saw the rise of fundamentalism across the globe. Over the past 40 years, our region and the entire world has been engulfed by the rise of fundamentalism. Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, you name it, Jewish, and of course Islamic fundamentalism. And can you imagine a women's revolution in Rojava, in Iran, changing the face of the world for better? And I think it's so hopeful, but it is under huge amounts of attack. Rojava is being bombed right now by the Turkish state. In Iran, there are so many plans to subvert this revolution. If only we as feminists everywhere can see this as our revolutions, as the possibility of bringing change for women who most need it in the Middle East, North Africa, but also for women across the globe. If it's supported and encouraged, it can herald a new dawn. And I think as feminists, it is our historical task to defend it unequivocally without any ifs or buts.
Thank you so much, Maryam. I'm going to get back to you about some of I want to know about what's happening actually on the ground in Iran now with all of the resurgence and activism. So I'll get back to you. I wonder if we could hear from Nela. Nela, you're a human rights campaigner from Croatia. You are a member of the lesbian feminist group FiLiA, which was founded in Zagreb in 1989. Could you tell us a little bit? Was that wrong? Yeah. No, it's Could you tell us a little bit about the state of women's rights in your country? But I want a particular focus of what about lesbian rights?
I didn't expect that question. But yes, that was the first lesbian group, which didn't last for long, only two years because of the war and of nationalist politics. So it stopped. Lesbian rights at the moment are invisible. My current lesbian group, Contra, almost doesn't exist because you know what's in the focus. Only transgender rights and lesbian and gay are completely invisible. And I don't consider myself as a part of this LGBT movement, as it is called.
How are you finding it, advocating for actual lesbian rights in that context?
I'm not really advocating for lesbian rights at the moment. I'm mostly focused on opposition to Catholic fundamentalism, which is very intensive in Croatia. This is a global movement, although we don't know it from at the beginning of such forms that appear. For example, in Croatia, we have at the moment 40 days of prayers in front of hospitals that perform abortion. This is 40 days, once or twice a year. Then we have a so-called Walk for Life. Like 10,000 people are walking in the city, in many cities in Croatia. And they actually have in there, among them, even war criminals that are talking about life and values of life, so-called life of family. And then, as of October last year, we had a new form. Men every first Saturday on the main square kneeling there on their knees and praying for women to cover themselves. They pray against abortion and senseless things like that. So we have a lot of job to oppose all these attempts. And actually, these are the forms came through Catholic Church. Croatia signed all contracts with Vatican, with Holy See, and is obliged to provide religious education in schools. But also there are new orders, Ordo Iuris and Opus Dei, that are very powerful in Croatia. They enter the hospitals, they enter the family department at the law faculty. So they're really very, very powerful in Croatia, and we have a lot of job on that level.
Well, I'm glad that you're there. Okay, so thank you so much for telling us about your work there. It's curious, the Dominican Republic also signed that same contract with the Vatican to make sure that Catholic was a state religion in the Dominican. So secularism is a really important topic for us. I wonder if we could hear from Simone Watson, wonderful Simone. You're a feminist campaigner who advocates for the equality model of prostitution, and your focus lately has shifted to sexual assault legislation. Simone, can you tell us a little bit about your work to abolish the prostitutional system?
Well, promoting the equality model. Yes. Thanks. Promoting the equality model is really seriously important, but we need to have, a multi-pronged approach as well because of the language of it. In society, people don't understand that this is male violence. They don't understand that this cohort of men who buy women in prostitution are male sexual abusers. It's about doing it, being able to abuse her, but not this woman over here. So we work on So I work on the language with that. But recently, I've been working with Associate Professor Helen Pringle at the University of New South Wales. And we put a submission into inquiry into sexual consent laws where they wanted to, have all this like enthusiastic consent stuff. Have you got this theme? And I mean, for a start, why should you have to behave enthusiastically? I mean, just like having some liberated sex would be nice. But we have to be enthusiastic now because he doesn't know, right? So apart from that, we wanted to put prostitution in part of the sexual assault legislation for it to be recognised that there is still this class of women who are rapeable if you compensate them with money. And so we made 2 recommendations and we are fighting to hopefully that they go through. And one is that payment cannot be a factor of a trial or a court case, that if he has paid for sexual access to a woman's body, that cannot be taken into account whatsoever if she claims to have been raped. And actually I'll read it out because I've got the submission here. So, what we've recommended is an explicit clarification in all legal statements on sexual assault that a person accused of sexual assault or rape cannot rely on a consent achieved by payment of monetary sum, and an explicit legal formulation of civil action for survivor victims of prostitution. So they're ignoring it so far, but we won't go away. And have I got time to talk about another thing, or?
I'm going to come back to you.
Okay.
Yes. And I I'm very interested in the fact that you used to be a delegate for Amnesty International, and Amnesty International has a policy now promoting and advocating basically for prostitution. Yeah. So I want to know about how that all kicked off. But we're going to go back to you in a second. Bronwyn, wonderful Bronwyn. So you're a radical lesbian feminist campaigner who have campaigned in France, in Australia, and in the UK. You are the Professor Emerita of Transnational Studies in the University of Sydney. I want to know about the campaigning work that you have been doing at the moment in Australia, specifically about The Voice.
Okay, I can't claim to be a central campaigner around The Voice, but I've been involved in sort of oblique ways. But I just wanted to say before I get into that just listening to everyone here, I am reminded for the millionth time about how so many issues for us as women, well, all issues for us as women, traverse national, cultural, ethnic, class boundaries. Which doesn't mean that everything's the same and everyone's in the same situation, but I do get very tired of these sort of more liberal discourses where we white women in the global north are going to help our poor suffering sisters in the global south, because we sure as hell are poor suffering sisters in the global north as well. And that's one of the reasons I'm also campaigning or interested in, even though I'm a bit pessimistic about it, about the Voice referendum. In fact, I've had a pretty depressing week because, I won't say glad because it's not the right word, but heartened to hear Jonah Cherry in the opening plenary this morning talk about the situation in Hamas, with Hamas and Netanyahu in Israel and in Gaza, these nasty warmongering men. And if you think for 1 second that Hamas cares about the Palestinian people or that Netanyahu cares about Jewish people, you'd be dead wrong. They care about their own power. And as Joanna said very well this morning, women and kids are always the first victims of war. And there are so many knock-on effects, environmental trafficking and so on, and I don't need to tell you the story, you all know it. So, to the voice, this is the other part of my depressing week. Susan mentioned very briefly this morning when she was talking about Consuelo, she talked about a referendum that's being voted on in Australia tomorrow. I've already voted because I was away. But in 2017, this goes back to 2017, with a document called the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And Uluru is the big red rock in the middle of the country. And there was a national consultation process managed by Indigenous people with Indigenous representatives across the country. Now, First Nations people in Australia are a little bit under 4% of the population, so we're talking a small but significant minority because, well, you know, we invaded, basically. I am the product of a settler society, as I'm sure Raquel can relate to that as well, yeah? So their statement from the heart, and it was a process that was entirely managed by Indigenous people and the biggest of its kind ever. And I think the only one of its kind ever. And there were 3 demands. The first was a voice to Parliament, constitutionally encoded, so you can't get rid of it. And that would be a consultative body that's consulted on every piece of legislation relevant to Indigenous Australians, which is quite a bit of legislation, yeah? The second was Makarrata, which is, and the first part of that was a treaty, like in Aotearoa in New Zealand, where there's the Treaty of Waitangi. And the third thing was truth, which is like the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. You can find the Uluru Statement online. It's a very beautiful document. It's very short. The current Labor government pledged, as part of its election promises, to hold a referendum on the voice, and that referendum is being voted on tomorrow. 6 months ago, the majority of Australians supported the yes vote. Then the right wing got to work. Now, and consistently in every single methodologically sound poll that's been conducted over the last 6 months, 80 to 85% of Indigenous Australians support the voice. So let's not be wrong, Indigenous Australians want this. You know? Now, this is a feminist thing for me, it's a feminist campaign for me because anti-racism is a feminist issue. And Indigenous Australians are the most disenfranchised, disadvantaged people in Australia. On every single indicator or measure you can choose, they are the most disadvantaged, and women more so. About a quarter of the women in prison are Indigenous, a quarter to a third, for example. And that story of exclusion, poverty, disenfranchisement, violence against women, poor health outcomes, it goes right through. So this is an important feminist issue, right? The right wing got to work and said, oh, we don't have enough details. Constitutions don't do details. Constitutions do parameters and principles. Oh, it's going to be a coup d'etat. It's going to be divisive of the country. It won't work anyway. There are many, many reasons, and there's this right-wing consultancy company that's been involved in their campaign, and I know you're conscious of time, so I'll try and make this short. Now, there are 3 prominent Indigenous people who are very well known in Australia who have supported the no vote. One of them's a right-wing woman. She's the right-wing party, Liberal Party spokeswoman on Indigenous affairs, who recently said at a National Press Club luncheon, which is held with prominent people, and they give these speeches and they're recorded and the press talks about them. She said that colonisation was a good thing for Indigenous Australians. This is an Indigenous woman saying this. So she got all sorts of nasty names called her by other Indigenous Australians, which I'm sure you can imagine. Yeah, and anyway, I just want to say one more thing. So the reason I want to talk about this today comes back to the gender critical stuff very, very bizarrely. A number of feminists who are upset about...
I'm so sorry, Bronwyn. Can I come back to you in a second?
Okay.
I need to see from the other...
Sure,
okay.
sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Mina, can we talk with you for a second about your work? You're a campaigner against male violence and your work about, could you tell us a little bit about your work to end male violence against women and girls?
I mean, I don't think we have time, to be honest, but I will just mention a few other things. First of all, I think the creative disobedience thing is very important, and we really need to play on that with this network, with this FiLiA network, I think, with this international group, because I'm being prosecuted in my country now for calling the so-called president dishonorable. Okay, I'm facing up to 5 years imprisonment, and you know, I can justify my work to everybody in the world, but it's difficult for me to justify to my son if I am imprisoned, which it looks like I might be, considering another High Court judgment that came out 2 days ago. That I will not be able to tuck him into bed. So, and this happens, you know, when women are going through this in family courts, they can't say anything because it's considered contempt. And in areas where it's dangerous to speak out against the administration, if our sisters across the globe can voice their voices and they don't have a jurisprudence, a jurisdiction issue, that's brilliant. And I think we need to do this. Also, in terms of the abortion rights, I think we're really experiencing a backlash at the moment. And even in countries where we've able to stand for some kind of secular society, which in Muslim geographies, this is very difficult because the right-wing nationalist rhetoric is fueled also by Islam as well. So in our criminal code, for example, because we were a previous colony, it was 10 weeks, the abortion line. But because the Islamic sentiment is growing more and more with Turkey's assimilation politics in North Cyprus, the judges, the courts, their attitude is shifting to a more conservative area. And quite recently, a woman who terminated her pregnancy just a little bit over the 10-week mark, the judge convicted her for 9 months imprisonment. So we really need to heighten our resistance against this anti-secular, regressive, nationalist right-wing attitude as well.
Mina, thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything that any of us can do to help with the situation you're facing?
Well, I think it's not just me. I mean, there are thousands of women across the Middle East, across, you know, in other regions that my sisters here have discussed. So we need to really create a platform where we are voicing each other's opinions, showing solidarity, and so that maybe it's not really working anymore. People are pulling out of the Istanbul Convention, countries are pulling out of the European Council, and it might not work as much as it used to, but if the international communities have got their eyes on issues surrounding human rights and women's rights in particular, then it might help our cause. So I think this applies for a lot of people. What I'm facing is very minimal considering a lot of my sisters in Turkey and in other places very close to my home country are.
You're still a very important voice, so thank you for being here. Nadia, can we speak with you for a little bit about, you know, when you think about the situation of women's rights in Saudi Arabia, the thought that comes to mind do you see hope? Where do you see hope? Where do you see possibilities, opportunities with the women on the ground? And could you share some of those stories with us?
Okay. So I don't know if you can play the slides now. So okay. So there's a dress code. I'm sure everybody knows that. Women in public has to wear abaya, and in recent years, some women has been challenging that by taking pictures in public wearing short dresses. So women has been working very hard and this is definitely put women on like a big risk. You lose custody of your kids. Your spouses get so much pressure to divorce you or to leave you when you do something. Even if there's 2 years ago, a TikToker, a 14-year-old, said that she's a feminist. She considered herself a feminist, and she's against the dress code, and she considered like forcing women to dress a certain way is very demeaning for women. She got arrested, and she was forced to wear hijab and make another TikTok apologizing about what she said, and this, like a young girl, disappeared after that. A lot of women disappear right now in Saudi after speaking or saying something. Of course, there's still hope, and solidarity and support from women abroad will help us put enough pressure on the government to make reform. Recently, the UK government, they asked MPS to visit the UK. So you can help Saudi women, because MPS and other dictators, they seek legitimacy by working with Western countries, with Western leaders, by taking pictures with them. So you can help Saudi women by asking the government to cancel the visit, by speaking with your MP to put pressure and speak in the parliament against this visit. So yeah, basically that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maryam, I wonder if I could ask you a similar question. You know, we're hearing the voices of women in Iran. We're reading the news stories, the horrific news stories of what is happening to women, and it's shocking and it's harrowing. And I just wonder, you know, as a lifelong campaigner, you've devoted several decades of your life just to the fight of women's freedoms. Do you see light at the end of a tunnel? What's next and positive for women?
Well, I think all of us here who are activists, we are optimistic, aren't we? Otherwise, I think we couldn't wake up in the mornings. It's the fact that we believe that change is possible through collective action, that we can wake up in the morning and carry on with our lives, given the fact that there is really so much devastation everywhere. But I think the positive thing in Iran is that you've got a society that's been suppressed by a theocracy for over 4 decades. And nonetheless, you have a modern, secular, anti-clerical, and even anti-Islamic backlash in the country. And I always find it quite ironic that you have a man, Luke Perry, who's built a statue in Birmingham in celebrating the hijab. Here, it's something that seemed to be, a cause of celebration, whereas women in Iran are burning it and removing it and being killed for doing so. We've got, of course, Mahsa Jina Amini, who you all know. It was her 1-year anniversary of her murder just this September. But we have a young 16-year-old who was on her way to school without the hijab, even though it's compulsory in Iran. You won't believe images of the streets of Iran anymore. Women and girls are refusing to wear it. And she was getting onto the metro in Tehran with her friends on her way to school, 7 in the morning, and she was pushed so badly that she is in hospital now, and the doctors have said that she's brain dead. So, and that's just another young girl killed in the name of hijab. And I do want to discuss the issue of the hijab if I can, because I think it has been really so central to the control and suppression of women in Iran and Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia and elsewhere. And I think a criticism of the hijab as a tool that controls and manages and polices women's bodies and their sexuality is hugely important. It's not attacking women who are veiled in the same way that you can criticize prostitution, but you're not attacking women who are prostitutes. You can criticize FGM. You're not attacking women and girls who have been mutilated. And I think that's really crucial. I think if you've seen images of the Scold's bridle, which was a metal helmet type of thing that women were forced to wear, disobedient, rebellious women were forced to wear in the 18th century with a metal bar to humiliate and silence women. I do really believe that the hijab is a fabric version of the Scold's bridle. It is there to humiliate and silence women and to celebrate it. To celebrate it is really a scandal and abomination. And I just want to give a quote by Sadiq al-Azm. He's this wonderful Marxist Syrian philosopher, and he said something in defense of Salman Rushdie. He said it's always presumed that those of us who live in the Middle East, we are not worthy of serious dissidents or who come from Muslim backgrounds. We don't deserve them, we're incapable of producing them, and in the final analysis, it is the theocracy of the Ayatollahs that become us. But in reality, I think what the Woman, Life, Freedom Revolution in Iran is showing, what Rojava is showing, the actions you mentioned, that actually, you know, theocracy is not what becomes us, but rebellion and disobedience, and the unwillingness to submit is what becomes us.
Very moving and inspirational words there, Maryam. Thank you so much. So Betty, I was wondering if you could highlight some of the actions of your organization, the Alternative Movement of Individual Liberties in Morocco. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the actions? And I would like to know, from your personal experience as a campaigner, have you faced backlash? Have you faced repression or intimidation from the authorities?
Okay. I just want to say a word about abortion rights, because this evening I'm talking about abortion rights in Morocco. So that's why. So yeah, Mali, our movement was founded in 2009. So we are in 2023. We organized a lot of actions, a lot of happenings, a lot of campaigns. So the first one, for example, to have an idea, the first one in 2009 was a picnic during Ramadan, because in Morocco, when you eat during Ramadan, you go to jail for 6 months. So that was the first action, and it was a nightmare actually. And thank you, Maryam, for the support. In 2009, in 2013, for example, let me take a look at my notes. We organized kissing. Where is the kissing? Yeah, because in support of 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, jailed because of a picture of their kiss posted on Facebook. So it was a big, big happening. A lot of journalists around the world was there. It was in Rabat, the capital in Morocco. In 2017, for example, on 25 November, happening against male violence against women, we colored in red all fountains in Rabat. So I had a lot of problems because of this action I organized. So it was in 2017. The action took place in 2017. I was sued, and the trial was held in October 2022, but hopefully I was declared innocent. I'm like, okay, we organized a lot of campaigns and action against the patriarchal myth of female virginity, and the last campaign is an illustrated book. So it's like, you know, the patriarchal myth of female virginity is like the pillar of all male violence. So that's why we are campaigning against this myth. I've been arrested several times in custody. I was sexual assault by 3 policemen in 2016 when I was in custody. And the thing is that because of in our movements, our activism and my activism as radical feminist, when I was, for example, sexual assault by police, feminists in Morocco did not support me, so it was very difficult. So that's the problem actually in Morocco, because yeah, I do not need men, for sure, but when you do not have support by feminists, it's very difficult. I do not want to blame women or feminists, but it's very, very difficult because like I'm always alone facing these difficulties, these charges, harassment, threats, rape threats, and death threats. And I have like a funny thing. 2 years ago, Cologne, it was in August 20... Oh wait, yeah. So yeah, I was in a conference organized by Maryam Namazie, Council of Ex-Muslims, and I'm currently being persecuted for wearing a T-shirt during this conference because the T-shirt say Allah is lesbian. So now, yeah. Yeah.
That's what you meant by shocking.
Yeah, so I don't know what's gonna happen, but yeah, it was very funny when I was with the police and a lot of questions and they're like, what is this? But because of support of a lot of organizations, international organizations, that's why, despite custodies, etc., I do not go. I'm not go to jail. Thanks to international organization. I hope that feminist organization in Morocco will help, but I'm a little bit pessimist actually. Yeah. It's sad. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you.
Betty, I'm very sorry to hear about the sexual assault, and I just wanted to say I'm so glad that you are at FiLiA, and also you're not alone anymore. We're so grateful to have you. Okay, so I was just wondering if I could go back to Anna and the work that you do with the European Network of Migrant Women. Can you tell us a little bit about your campaign, Moms at Work, which is about supporting migrant mothers in their labor integration?
Yes. Well, Moms at Work is actually, it's a European Commission project, and I will be very honest, all European Commission projects are extremely boring. I mean, this is the truth, and people need to know about it because overwhelmingly grassroots organizations do not have access to this big funding. The process of writing application is extremely tedious, demanding, time-consuming, and then the reporting. So all of this, as a result, we have a lot of funding going to completely useless organizations. Yes. So perhaps not. I don't want to speak just about Moms at Work, but I want to say that our approach when we partner, or preferably when we lead projects, because this is what we want to do, we want to be the main applicant, get the money, and do what we want to do with this money for the women that we want to benefit from the results of this project. So it is one of these examples where the project itself perhaps not so interesting, but we really did our best, and we, for example, one of the things that we're proud about, we created this video campaign, Vaishnavi Sundar actually created it, it's called Mothers of the World, and we want to use this film as a conversation starter. We imagine to have festivals around the world called Mothers of the World, where women can speak about various issues. It can be just a starting point in a conversation. But speaking about the general subject of migrant women access to the labor market, the reality is such in the European Union, and even though UK is now out, but the figures are pretty much the same, migrant women in Europe, they constitute the most overqualified and the least employed group, so statistically. And this is compared both to European women and their male counterparts from their own migrant communities. When it comes to migrant mothers, it's even more difficult. I mean, we know, for example, single mothers, even they're not migrant, they will be at the bottom in terms of the poverty when we're looking at the indexes. It's the single mothers usually. And we have the situation with migrant women who are trying to access the labor market. I mean, obviously they end up in underpaid occupations that do not correspond their qualifications, their training, their experience. What happens very often with women after 2, 3, 5 years, women arrive with a lot of ambitions. They want to do things. None of them want to be just being this useless person who's sitting on, depending on their husband, but they're not allowed to work very often. They're not allowed to work for legal reasons because there are legal limitations very often, cultural reasons. They're not allowed to work by their husbands or some other male members of the family because they're supposed to be the carers of the family. So all of this accumulates, and women are, of course, many of them are mothers, and as a result, we have this hugely marginalized and discriminated group from different ethnic backgrounds of migrant and refugee women who suffer disproportionately. And so part of this campaign, and we will continue working on this, the labor access of migrant women to labor rights in the coming years.
That is extremely important work, and I'm glad that you're a strategist there. Okay, so Bronwyn, you had a point to make about gender-critical issues and how it connects to the voice referendum. Could you help us?
And it connects in a singularly negative way, I'm afraid. Not only have a number of women who say they're gender critical and even feminist and even radical feminist bought some of Dutton's, the leader of the right-wing opposition, bought some of his lies and his party's lies, and Jacinta Price, who's the Indigenous woman who talked about the benefits of colonialism. They have not only bought those lies, but they are saying, well, we don't like the ALP, which is the Australian Labor Party, because we don't like what they're doing about gender identity, and they're not listening to women, and they're not listening to us on sex-based rights. Therefore, we're going to vote no. A number of women in the social networks and other networks I'm involved in, and a number of whom are in a radical feminist group, have said they're going to vote no because, oh, we don't know the details, oh, we doubt if it's going to work, oh, it's not what all Indigenous people want. You wait for consensus, you never get anything done. There's an overwhelming majority. So suddenly we have women sort of not understanding the difference between their left and their right. I'm not speaking party political terms, I'm speaking broader terms, and becoming tunnel visioned. And I think that's a huge danger for us. I'm not gender critical, I'm gender abolitionist. So, you know, I'm at the radical end of that. But for us as radical feminists who have a commitment to social justice and a radical feminism, for me, that means something. It means you have an analysis. It means you have a commitment to the liberation of all women. And you're not going to, as white women, punish Indigenous women because you don't like a political party. I mean, that for me makes no sense. So it's a very depressing but somewhat cautionary tale that I do offer this assembly, that we really do need to sort out our left from our right. And I know that party politics, I've never trusted any political party in my life, and I'm not going to start now. But I know, you know, which parties I won't ever, ever, ever in my life vote for, and you can guess which ones. So I think we really need to be careful because we're in this fraught context of gender identity ideology. Everything starts to become about that for us in the West. And yeah, I'm going to finish. So I'm really depressed about this referendum because at the moment the support for the yes vote has gone from 75% nationwide to 40%. Yeah. And when feminists say they're going to vote no, I sort of, you know, like, just don't talk to me anymore. Racism is a feminist issue, and we're not going to kick Indigenous people in the face.
Thank you for that, Bronwyn. Nela, can I go back to you just 1 second? I wanted to know about your work as a campaigner against male violence. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences there? And is there cause for hope in your view?
Yes, campaigning against violence is in Croatia since '87, so that's some 35 years of fighting against violence by feminists. But we see today a lot of backlash. And there were some improvements, of course, but a lot of problems. Most recently, we had 3 cases that really attracted a lot of attention in public. There was a case actually in Bosnia, but close to Croatia, that the guy shot, tortured and abused and shot his wife dead on Instagram live stream. Yes, and then there was a case in Croatia that policeman killed girlfriend with service pistol, but it was actually presented as an accident, and then later on discovered that it was his girlfriend. And then there was a case of a woman who voice recorded the torture by her husband, who was a famous sport guy. And the priest said, as his reaction, one of Croatian famous priests, he sent a message to men: if you endured such hysteria and whining, I admire you. Guys, congratulations. So this is the situation, unfortunately, right now, that the government did not do anything in real life. They just signed the international documents, but the situation on the ground is really terrible for women. And since some 7 to 8 years, we have now not only nationalism in Croatia, but a lot of racism, because we have migrant women and refugee women. And we work now with women like you do in Western countries, with women with problems of trafficking, forced marriage, genital mutilation, which is not really recognized, as Anna said, and we represent them at court. This situation I described actually brought a lot of women's protests in the streets. In Croatia, we had in August in 20 cities. And as a result, the government actually gathered women activists to the meeting, and we will have a femicide as a separate criminal act. So there is a good sign.
Thank you, Nela. That's remarkable work. I'm so grateful to have you here. Before we go to Simone, Mina, you mentioned that you had a comment to make about the hijab.
Yes, I need the PowerPoint. If the guys at the back can put up the PowerPoint. They can't. Okay, but I just want to show 2 photos. Is there any chance that we can? Okay, I was going to show you 2 photos. The first photo was of my organization going to a rural area, teaching women how to read and write. And all of the women in this picture, keep going, have got hijabs, have got headscarves, right? Keep going. There, stop, right. So that's us in a village. There is not a single woman without her hijab in that village, okay? If I want to go into that village and talk to women about their divorce rights, talk to women about reproductive health, and take in teachers to teach them how to read, I can't wear a T-shirt that says Allah is lesbian, right? But that doesn't mean that I'm criticizing her for what she does. It's amazing, and we need organizations like that as well. But there also needs to be organizations like us that don't. Why I'm saying this is because we need to be a bit more understanding to each other as feminist organizations in that sense, because we need to understand each other's context. And we don't have time, so I'll stop there. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Maria.
Well, I mean, I think every organization doesn't say Allah is a lesbian. In fact, that's why it's needed, because criticism of religion is not acceptable. Religion is very privileged. And in fact, you know, the work that Betty does is what's needed more than anything else. And I think we can respect people, but we don't have to respect ideas and cultures and traditions that are misogynist, patriarchal, and inhuman.
Absolutely. Simone, we cannot leave without hearing your story about being a delegate at Amnesty International and how they adopted a pro-prostitution stance. And what's your position on that? What do you think?
Oh, I love it. It's fantastic. No. I read a footnote 5 in a draft policy that was leaked, and along with other feminists around the world, it made me decide to come out against prostitution because I said this can't be. It started off like very gender-neutral language, sort of like as if this impacts men and women in exactly the same way. And anyway, in Australia, we got together. We became members of Amnesty International, and I basically got voted in as a human rights delegate, much to the annoyance of the president of Amnesty International. But what I wanted to iterate and reinforce what Bronwyn Winter was saying about the yes vote. We think it is going to go very poorly, but there's always a job in prostitution for all Indigenous women in Australia and for mums at work, and of course that's what women are good for, and if you're poor, then, you know, why not do that? So Australia has a very backwards, it reminds me actually when Nela was talking about Catholicism, the pro-sex trade are very sort of theocratic in their way. They are restrictive, they're sexually repressive. They're telling us that if we do what men happen to want to do to us, or a certain cohort of men, then that will be very, very good for us. And I wonder where we've heard that before, right? As with Nela saying about femicide being introduced, we have to remember that rape was not part of genocide legally in international criminal tribunals, and it was in 1998, I think, or no, 2002, when the first man was convicted, of course, of genocide. It was Jean-Paul Akayesu in Rwanda, that rape was put into that legislation as an act of genocide. In Australia, we've had a White Australia policy, which means that we breed out the black, so you get women who look like me, who are also sex trade survivors who are Indigenous women. And just to sort of iterate what our dear friends across the road this morning were saying, and that fine feminist gentleman, because the liberal feminists love listening to men, when he said that if your feminism is not intersectional, then it's not feminism. And I would like to quote Nenochka Rosca, who was a political dissident and political prisoner under the Marcos regime in the Philippines, who is now in New York, and she said, if your intersectionality does not centre women, it is not feminism. Thank you.
Thank you to our audience for being here. It has been such an honor to be in a panel with such remarkable women.